In episode 4, the mob continues to try to take over the ship. They threw the captain along with everybody else in the same room with Oleg and Jerome. But they tasked those two guys with throwing all of the dead bodies overboard. And the dead bodies have certainly piled up. Shortly after that, though, they notice that the Prometheus is gone. And not only that, but their compasses are pointed the exact opposite direction. One of the crew members guesses that they're back where they were 3 days ago. Franz has no idea how this happened, neither does anybody else, but he orders that the ship just head out west, because that's where they were headed. In third class, that's where the third-class passengers are holding the rest of the crew who did not want to mutiny. That includes Sebastian. While at gunpoint, he tells all of them, there's something you need to know. This company wanted us to sink the Prometheus. He then tells them that he thinks the company wanted them to sink it so that nobody got off alive. And if you think about it, once the child came on board from the Prometheus, that's when people started dying. Doesn't take much to get the third-class passengers, especially Tova and Crester's family, on board with this theory that the boy is causing the deaths. With guns in hand, they proclaim that they will find the child. Tova, however, is not on board with this. She's not hunting a child. The child, though, is locked up in Mara's room, as are just about every other passenger on the ship. This forces Lucien and Clemence to have to be in the same room together, where Clemence asks Lucien where he went the previous night and what was in those cylinders that she found. As for his whereabouts, Lucien gets extremely defensive. And as for the cylinders, he tells her that it's potassium bromide. It treats his convulsions. If he takes a little sip of it, it keeps him from having the seizures. One of the side effects, though, is impotence, so that might explain why, their love life isn't great. He tells her the truth is he's going to end up dying. He's got maybe a few days or weeks, maybe a little bit more. And when she asks, why didn't you tell me earlier? He says, it's because I know you don't care if I live or die. He then walks over to the table and opens up a drawer, and he finds the war medal that Jerome left behind, and he gets completely freaked out. He demands to know from Clemence how it got there, and she explains, well, I thought it was yours. I put it there. But he starts screaming, where did you find it? Choking her, yelling. He's able to compose himself and apologize, but he's freaked out. And the reason why he's freaked out is because Lucien and Jerome used to be friends. They were old war buddies, but as they were bunkered down, they had to make a decision. Stay there and possibly die, or pretend to be a lieutenant who is hurt, and Jerome being the guy who saved him. Jerome, though, doesn't want to be known as a deserter, so he pushes back. And that's when Lucien knocked him out and threw him in the jail cell. When he woke up, Lucien was wearing the lieutenant's outfit. Jerome was behind bars. Lucien looked at this as an opportunity to become somebody else, return to France as somebody completely new. He has plans of walking to a command post, and once he gets there, he's going to tell them where to find Jerome, but he's also going to tell them that he was a deserter. He's actually the one that ripped off the war medal from his lapel, and he hands it to Jerome as an item he can use to trade in prison. So the fact that Lucien is once again seeing this war medal, it's understandable of why he's this freaked out. Lucien then gets out of there. He needs some air. He has no idea, though, that Jerome is on board. And while Jerome and Oleg dump bodies over the side, Jerome knows that he needs to get away. He's able to run away from the men that were holding him and Oleg accountable for dumping the bodies. He runs down a hall in first class, but he can hear that they're right behind him. So he decides to knock on the only door he recognizes, which is Lucien and Clemence's. Clemence answers, and she's the only one in there. And the first thing he says is, I should not be here. But she assures him that he should stay. He shakes his head and says, no, I've seen this before. A grab for power always ends badly. You can't lead without earning it. I've got to help the captain. Right before he leaves, though, Clemence says, all right, then I'm going to help you. And the two take off, looking for the captain. They're not the only ones who are looking for the captain, though. So is Mara, but she gets caught by the crew. She gets brought in front of Franz, and Franz tells her that the captain she knew is not the captain anymore. He orders the men to take Mara back to her room, but she says, you guys have no idea what's going on here. You're making a horrible mistake. I have to see the captain. This causes a bit of a pissing contest between the two, where Mara is escorted back to her room. But she arrives just as the third-class mob arrives, who are looking for the boy. When Mara finds out why the third-class passengers are there, she tries her best to make the case that the boy is fine. He's not the reason why people are dying. But they don't believe her, and they're able to get the key off of her and open the door. but when they do, the boy is nowhere to be found. The mob is very much on edge about the fact that they didn't find the boy in her room, but they're still on the hunt. They're going to go door to door to find him if they have to. Every time they leave a room, they're locking it. So when they leave Maura's room, she can't really get out. She's stressed out because she's locked in a room. She has no idea where the boy is, but that's when she hears a faint sound because the boy had hidden in her room. Unbeknownst to Maura, she too had a hidden shaft. The boy found it, and he climbed in. So the boy is at least safe. You might think all this commotion would cause Daniel to come out of his room, but he didn't hear it because he's actually in the steam room. He snuck down there to check out the device that's used to gauge steam, the one that the captain said never worked. He pulls out the device that looks like a child's toy, and he seems to hook it up to the machine. Just like he did in his room, he starts moving some of the buttons around, and the machine on the ship starts powering up. Or at least doing something. So he never even heard the commotion about the child. But that commotion is about to get a lot louder. Because Sebastian was able to get in front of Franz and convince him too that the best course of action is to find the child. Give the people what they want, which is a reason on why people are dying, i.e. the boy. So now, instead of just the third-class passengers looking for the child, pretty much everybody on board is looking for the child. All but a couple of holdovers. In the hunt for the child, it brings the third-class passengers to Angel's room. As they search around, Angel addresses Crester by name, and it tips off Crester's family that these two know each other. It takes all but 3 seconds for Crester's mom to figure out how they know each other. And it hurts Crester quite a bit when his mother says, "I wish you were the one that died." As the group leaves, Angel grabs Crester by the arm to try to bring him back in. But torn between his family and his lover, Crester chooses his family by ripping his arm away and spitting in the face of Angel. So the hunt for the boy continues. Luckily for the boy, he's in a location where that group already checked, but he still isn't answering any of Maura's questions. Like, what are the shafts for? What's going on? He remains completely silent. Since she's getting nothing from the boy, she decides to go searching for the captain one more time, but she can't get out. That's when the boy helps her out by using that beetle. The beetle goes under the door, and then suddenly it's unlocked. Maura is really confused, but she's also confused when the boy leads her out of the room, and the two follow the beetle. The beetle leads them to the lifeboat exit, where they see Jerome, Clemence, the captain, and Ramiro, who escaped. Maura walks up to the captain and asks him, "Are you all right?" But the captain demands answers. He asks her in a pretty stern tone, "What do you know about the Prometheus? Stop lying." The boy actually walks up and gets in between the two, but he still doesn't say a word. And that's when everybody is caught by Franz and the mob. They make it clear they're not there for any of them. They just want the boy. And Maura tries to say that's not happening, but it's actually the boy who steps in front of Maura and walks right over to the mob without fear at all. Now with the boy in their custody, the mob is planning on locking up the captain and all of his supporters. But one of them isn't willing to just go quietly. Jerome reaches for a hammer and ends up getting shot by Franz. When he wakes up, he's all by himself. He can't quite figure out how he's alive, but he goes searching for Clemence and the rest of the group, and he finds them. He gives a speech about how he worked way too hard to get on this ship, and he's not going to die on it. And it's on all of them to take back the ship. The captain's group rushes up to the top deck where they're in a standoff with the mob, who is ready to throw the boy overboard. This sparks a pretty big brawl between the groups. And during it, Maura notices that Tolva's mother is ready to throw the boy overboard. And Maura makes a beeline to save him, but she's too late. The boy ends up getting chucked overboard and into the ocean. Daniel grabs Maura and shakes her and says, "We got to get out of here." And the two make their way to safety. The fight itself looks like it's about to disperse, with each group retreating. But one of the people that's fighting is Jerome. When he sees Clemence, he gives her a hug, and then he hears someone scream his name, and it's Lucien, holding a gun. He returned to his room, and he didn't find his wife there, and he knew something was up. Lucien yells at Jerome to let Clemence go. And then he starts yelling, "How did you find me?" He doesn't really wait for a response, though. He just takes his wife back and retreats. As Lucien drags Clemence back to the room, he's asking her, "What did he tell you?" "Don't believe a word he said." And Clemence is just really puzzled on how the two even know each other. While Lucien locks up Clemence, Jerome gets dragged into the dining hall to get patched up, along with the rest of the captain's supporters. Mara and Daniel are there as well, and Mara just can't get her head around what she watched because she feels like the boy accepted his fate, and he knew what was coming. Daniel reaches across the table and holds Mara's hand, but the two get interrupted when the captain runs up to Mara and says, "I need to talk to you now." He then pulls out the passenger list and says, "Explain this. You were supposed to be on the Prometheus. Who are you really?" But Mara just mumbles, "This is impossible." She's as confused as the captain. And then they hear a banging. It's coming from a cabinet near the bar, a cabinet that mirrors the same bar that was on the Prometheus. There's more banging, then there's a light, and then the boy walks right out of it. Everybody in the room is shocked. But the boy walks up to Mara and gives her a hug. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.